So welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining us for today's Top 3 in 30 webinar. Today's webinar is provided for you by the Delaware National Estuarine Research Reserve. Managed by the DNREC's Division of Climate, Coastal, and Energy, the Delaware National Estuarine Research Reserve is part of a national network of reserves funded by NOAA. My name is Lynn Pusey, and I am the Training and Engagement Coordinator for the Reserve's Coastal Training Program. Today's webinar is floodplain management in your town. I have a few quick housekeeping things to go over, and then we'll jump right in. So first of all, if you are interested in subtitles during today's presentation, you can do so using the icon at the bottom of your screen with a CC in it, and the label says Show Captions. All participants are muted for this webinar. If you have questions during the presentation, please place those in the chat box. We will not be raising hands for verbal questions during the webinar, but I will be monitoring the chat, and I'll go through questions at the end of the presentation. Today's webinar is being recorded. A copy of that recording will be made available to you afterwards and will be placed on the Coastal Training Program website. Okay, let's jump in. Today's webinar will be presented by Kathy Potter. Kathy has been with DNREC for more than 25 years, and in her current role, she is the Delaware Coordinator for the National Flood Insurance Program. Thank you, Kathy, for joining us today. I'm going to allow Kathy to share her screen now so she can tell us what we should know about floodplain management in our towns. So Kathy, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. We're going to make this quick because it's top 3 in 30. That means 30 minutes or less. So we're going to be discussing floodplain management in your town and the National Flood Insurance Program. Our 3 key points are where it rains and floods. It will happen in your town. Don't think it won't. And the primary goals of the NFIP are about the safety of life and property, emphasis on life. And compliance with the NFIP will yield resilience. Take a look at these beautiful pictures, local Delaware. This is a real happening event. So floodplain management has very simple goals. Lower the cost of flood insurance for citizens, reducing flood damage and the need for expensive mitigation solutions. And by having more resilient communities, we are going to prevent some catastrophes and prevent damages. And we're going to decrease recovery time. If you look at these pictures, recovering from those damages was not a quick fix. So what is the NFIP? That's an acronym. That's an acronym you'll hear a lot. The National Flood Insurance Act was established in 1968. It offers flood insurance to properties with significant risk and minor risk. It also provides coverage for people if it's a residential property or commercial. And it encourages flood risk reduction by taking floodplain management standards, by the adoption of those standards, which are just simple steps. Sometimes they might seem logical to you, and they might not seem logical for your area, but the benefit is to help your community. And this program is managed by FEMA. Now, the floodplain management requirements are in 44 CFR 60.3. There are subcategories of those. Now, the CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations, provides minimum floodplain management regulations. Communities can adopt more stringent requirements. Strongly encourage that. That is completely up to the community if they want to go above what the minimum requirements are. But the communities at a minimum must adopt and enforce the minimum NFIP standards and requirements. It's up to the community to enforce what is in their community. Now, the floodplain management requirements focus on the special flood hazard areas, SFHA. You will hear that acronym a lot. Sounds like ceviche for those of you who like that appetizer. And for all of these communities, anybody that wants to join, DNREC does have what's called a model floodplain ordinance. That's where DNREC already has the language. These communities didn't have to write these regulations for their own community laws or their community ordinances. DNREC had a model form. All they had to do was say, I'll take that, add in a couple things with their community name. Bob's your uncle, they were done. Here are some of the zones that are in the parts of Delaware. There's only one that's not listed. It's a little bit harder to find. But these are the SFHAs. There are 2 outside, but there are these 3 noted that are in there. So not every town in Delaware has all of these. Zone A, which is a tricky area, we'll talk about that a little bit. Zone AE and VE. To help you remember, V stands for velocity. That means you're going to have wave action. Shaded X and unshaded X. Those are areas that are less susceptible to flooding. So you have to kind of know, what zones does your community have? It may have 1 or 2, it may have several. And where you work and where you live, you can go through multiple zones. So you have to keep that in mind, and you want to know your zone. So again, special flood hazard areas are very important to know. Now for Zone A, it's tricky because that means it's not been mapped by FEMA. All of these zones have been mapped by FEMA. Zone A has not. It's an area that floods, but we don't have the base flood elevation established yet for this area. So if you're in a community that has a Zone A and someone wants to develop in Zone A, they're going to have to, that developer is going to have to spend a lot of money to develop the base flood elevation for that area. Money the town is not going to be spending, the developer will spend it. DNREC has the Delaware floodplain tool. It's a very simple tool you can use. You put in any address. There's a box up here. Type in any address in Delaware, and it will tell you what the flood zone is for that property. It will also tell you if there is a base flood elevation already established. Some properties have multiple zones, especially if you're on the coast. But sometimes those flood zones will change just running through a property. So you can use this tool to get some information. If you look over here, there's a layer box. And if you click that, it'll open up some more layers. So you have some other options to look at. But the floodplain tool is a very simple tool. If you see me out and about, like Delaware State Fair, this is something I'm showing a lot to people just because they need to know. Flood insurance and the SFHA. Lenders are the ones who require flood insurance, not DNREC, not FEMA. Lenders are the ones that require flood insurance. If you have a federally backed mortgage, including a home equity loan, you will be required to have flood insurance if the property is in the special flood hazard area. And keep in mind, the mortgage holders may require flood insurance if you're near the SFHA. So the property next to you might be in the SFHA and you're not. But guess what? Water's not going to follow a property line. It's going to go where it wants to go. That happens all the time. And there are people who, once they pay off their mortgage, they drop their flood insurance. That is not something you want to do, because more than 40% of all NFIP claims come from outside areas of the highest risk. Sometimes it's called nuisance flooding, but keep in mind, statistically, you're more likely to have a flood event than a fire event. And if you have a situation where you've had water come into your home from outside, there's a strong likelihood your homeowner's insurance will not cover that at all. You will be on your own. So if you have a situation where there's a storm and debris has broken a window and you now have rain coming into your home, there's a strong likelihood your homeowner's insurance is going to say, nope, that's not covered. That precipitation came from outside. And then what are you going to do other than be highly upset? But that's one of the reasons why some of the minimum requirements in the NFIP requirements are that you strap down things that can blow around. We don't want things to become debris and damage other properties. Compliance. Compliance equals resilience, because we want people to not have to worry about some of these damages. FEMA has guidance documents on hundreds of topics, and there is the National Resilience Guidance. You don't have to think of what to do. Somebody else has already done it for you. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Planning now is called sunny day planning. When you're calmer, you're going to think better. There are many communities at the beach, and Matt Janice can probably confirm this, that have sunny day flooding. It's tidal, and you have flooding on days where there's no precipitation falling. If you prepare for compliance, it's going to come more naturally to you. If you plan for it and prepare for it, when it does happen, you will be better able to react to it. Mitigation programs are available to provide funds to communities to cover a large percentage of a project. It'll never cover 100%. FEMA, which provides the funds, always wants a community to have a buy-in to it. They want them to have skin in the game. And if you have a community is involved in a project, you're going to have a better chance of success. As with a lot of things, if you prepare now, it's cheaper than if you pay later. It's going to always cost more to fix something later than to try and mitigate it now. So if you plan for it, for example, like having higher freeboard or elevating a new home that you're building, even if it's just by 6 inches, 12 inches, just a little bit higher, you will pay in the future by not having some problems. It's been, FEMA has shown probably a few years ago now, so money may have changed. 1 inch of damage generally will cost $25,000. I'm sorry, 1 inch of water will cost $25,000 in damage, because you've got carpeting, flooring, your drywall, your everything behind your drywall, if you have anything, furniture, $25,000 for 1 inch of water. So if you make your home a little bit higher, if you can, you're saving money in the future. And you can also look into some existing programs for compliance, such as the FEMA Disaster Resilience Hub. There's lots of great ideas. Again, you don't have to spend a lot of time thinking about this. Your community doesn't have to hire, I don't want to say hire a consultant, but you can look at that first. That way you can have some great ideas at your fingertips. Your goal is getting back to normal as soon as possible. I will promote the city of Lewis. When they rebuilt their library, gosh, it's been more than 5 years ago now. They built it higher than they needed to, which ended up being fantastic. And when they had a storm just a few years later, the library ended up being the hub for the community. So when they needed to get information out to community members, or they needed to get materials out to community members, everybody could come to the library because it had the least amount of damage. So you want to get everyone back to normal. It's also good for mental health. Here are some important links to have, and Lynn's going to send those out to you. Number one, the flood planning tool. I'm always going to promote that. We also have DNREC iAdapt. That is, iAdapt is an acronym, but if you go into there, you put an address in, it'll ask you some questions about the property, and it'll give you some feedback on different ways to mitigate for different hazards, not just flooding. FEMA has a flood insurance quote tool. It will end up giving you 3 different quotes, because it depends on what amount you want to kind of have as your copay. Know your zone. That is a big thing to know. You always want to know where your zone is, where you work, where you live, where you play. There is a Delaware Homeowners Handbook to Repair for Natural Hazards, second edition, that is available. It's a printed book. There are many copies. Let me know if you would like one. I can certainly get one to you, but available online through that link. FEMA's Flood Smart website, lots of information. And there's also the Delaware Coastal Flood Monitoring System. For those of you that want to know what's going on down by the coast, if it's something you just want to watch, make sure you're staying safe. So again, we're going to point out where it rains, it floods. Don't think it won't happen to you. It will. I promise you. Again, the NFIP is about the safety of life, which cannot be replaced, and property. Some people will say property can't be replaced. Maybe an object, but you want to protect the property that you have spent so much time and money keeping safe. And then compliance equals resilience. We want to get you back to the life that you love. And here's my contact information. You're welcome to copy it down. If you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to me. I frequently give out my contact information, and there are people who contact me. So if they paperwork for their community, you know, I give out the community floodplain official information also.
Thanks, Kathy. I wanted to note, you had mentioned the homeowner's handbook. I have several copies of that here as well. So I put the link for that. All the links that Kathy had on that last slide are in the chat for you. And I will send them to you in a follow-up email. So you'll have them after today too. But I wanted to let folks know, if you do want a hard copy, I have several of these homeowner handbooks as well. So you can send me an email, reach out to me at any time also. And I also wanted to mirror Kathy's comment for the iAdapt application. That is a really great tool for independent properties, for businesses, for homeowners, for renters. And it gives you resources for things you can do on your own property. So you plug in information about where you are, what you're willing to do, how much money you're willing to spend to help mitigate flooding on your property. And then that actually provides for you a lot of great resources. So highly recommend checking that app out. I did put that in the chat as well. And again, you'll get it in a follow-up email. Kathy, we do have one question. Is it common for FEMA to change a zone if asked by a developer?
Well, the only way a zone is changed is if there's a map study. Map studies are not done very often because they do cost money. A particular area can be taken out of the SFHA if documentation is done. You have to submit, there's a couple different forms if you want a letter of map amendment or a letter of map revision. But that is done in conjunction with the community floodplain official. You have to show evidence that that particular parcel or that area is no longer in the special flood hazard area. But that's not changing a zone. Changing a zone is only done if there's a map study done.
Kathy, how would folks find out who their community floodplain official is?
Well, you can reach out to me, but there's also, as of Monday, we do have, DNREC did partner with a company called Forerunner, and we do right now have our community contacts listed on there. I will show you that, and I can put a link to that in the chat box. That was just done on Monday. So
I'm going to add that link also to the list of links that we provide in the follow-up email.
If you go to the Forerunner, there is a section, and Emma probably gave a direct link, where it'll take you directly to it's an alphabetical list of communities that are in the NFIP, and then it'll tell you who the multiple contacts are. Because for a lot of communities, there's more than one contact person. It generally starts with the mayor. That's generally not the community floodplain official, but if you scroll over, it gives the contact information, name, email, phone number. Because
Thanks, Kathy.
your community floodplain official is the primary record keeper of everything, so they would have the most amount of information on a particular property.
That's helpful. We had a question about, will the webinar show and chat transcript be shared by email? So the webinar is being recorded, and there will be captions for that in the recording, and I will be sharing that recording. The chat, however, is not something that generally gets shared out. But the links that are in the chat will be in the follow-up email. So you'll still have access to those after we all log out of this today, because I'll send them to you in a follow-up email. Kathy, another question we have. Can you talk a bit about how the flood zones are mapped by FEMA, what they do and don't consider, as well as the likelihood of getting updated maps?
That is not in my wheelhouse. Ironically, we do have someone on who is going to be working on the mapping, but she's new. We have Dr. Emma House with us. She's going to be our new mapping person, but she's kind of new to DNREC. We're very excited to have her. So, but mapping is something that has to be funded. So that is a challenge also. It's got to be paid for, and it's not a short expense. It's not, it's not a short activity. It's not a cheap expense. They don't get updated very often. Jordana, you might already know how often or how many times you've seen a map updated. I think the last time maps were updated around here in our area was probably 2014. That's the last time I've heard of statewide maps being updated.
Okay. Maybe that's a discussion for another time too. I'll make a note of that as something that maybe we're interested in talking about more. There is something in the chat. Latest date on maps were 2015. So I think we're pretty close.
Thank you, Matt.
Yep. We have a few minutes left, but I also wanted, Kathy, is there, you had mentioned mitigation programs that provide funds to cover like a percentage of a project. Where would folks go if they wanted to learn more about those mitigation programs? Where would they find them? Where would they find information on that?
In Delaware, it's actually DEMA that administers the mitigation and grant projects.
Great. Thank you.
I can give you the name and email of our state hazard mitigation officer. The acronym is SHMO, but every state has a hazard mitigation officer, and our state hazard mitigation officer is Phil King. So his email is probably philip.king. I don't know if it's 2 L's or not. I'm not sure. So we'll have to add his contact information. But yes, DEMA handles all of the mitigation grants. Those are temporarily on hold.
And another question, given kind of the state of things kind of always in flux at the moment, is there anything else that you might recommend if in the future we're not looking at like National Flood Insurance Program, if that were to not be in existence, or if anything changes? Now, I hope it is, but if anything were to change, are there any other suggestions that you have for the folks in our room today for additional prep, like other mitigation efforts you might recommend or anything like that?
I would say look at the iAdapt and the owner's handbook. Hypothetically, if the NFIP were to go away and people had to get private flood insurance, that would be a lot more money, because the point of the NFIP is to offer flood insurance at a lower rate. So it was developed in 1969. People who had flood insurance were paying a lot of money. And so people asked the federal government for help. So the federal government said, all right, let's kind of spread the load. So that's kind of how the NFIP was developed. It was to make it easier and cheaper for people to actually get flood insurance. So when there was the shutdown, the really long one last fall, when there was no NFIP, people could not get new NFIP flood insurance policies. They couldn't renew any. So that's a challenge.
So the recommendation there is then do what you can with mitigation efforts. So, like freeboard for your house or other flood mitigation things that you can do to prevent flooding as much as possible in lieu of,
And I know communities, and there's a lot of community reps here, communities have an uphill battle at times because there are citizens who have property in the SFHA and they don't realize they need a permit to do anything in the SFHA. They need a floodplain permit that's completely separate from a building permit, from any other state permit. A floodplain permit is a unique permit that your community floodplain official will issue you. So if you're in the SFHA, if you are putting new landscaping in, if you are repaving your driveway, if you're tearing up your driveway, if you're putting in a new mailbox, all that stuff, you need a floodplain permit from your community floodplain official, because everything is impacted if you're in the SFHA.
So know your zone. We'll come back to that. Okay. And we have about 1 more minute for questions. Just kind of a follow-up to the flood zone mapping question. What it looks like we were looking for was recommendations for communities who technically aren't in a mapped flood zone but are still experiencing flooding.
That's called nuisance flooding. It's very annoying. Sometimes it's based on the soil. You might have soil that doesn't drain well, but then you also have development. One of the key aspects of the NFIP is no adverse impact. It's designed where if somebody's doing development here, it's not supposed to negatively impact someone downstream, downwind. So that is a key point. So when subdivisions are done, or even a new home, there's not supposed to be the excess water from someone else going on to another property. And you're not supposed to have people, for example, filling a swale or trying to move a ditch that's on their property. Things like that you cannot do. But people do things anyway, and then there's a negative impact to someone else.
Okay. Well, we are at time. Kathy, I want to thank you for your presentation today. I want to thank you for answering all of the questions that came your way. We appreciate your time. To everyone who's on the call, I'm putting one more final link, I promise, in the chat. If you could click on that, please.
Happy Flood Awareness Week.
Yeah, oh, that's right. It is Flood Awareness Week. That's a wonderful plug for the end. So yeah, click on that link in the chat for me, please. That's for our survey. It's just 3 questions. We would love your feedback. This really helps us determine the format and the content of future webinars and trainings. A reminder, our next Top 3 in 30 webinar will be Thursday, April 16th at 2 p.m. And we will be learning about Delaware's energy programs. So look for that coming ahead. Check your email for probably about a week or so. We should have the recording ready. I'll send you all the links from today. If you have any additional questions after that, feel free to reach out to me or to Kathy. And with that, thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.